Welcome to an episode related to research presentations and discussions about the 65th Infantry Regiment known as the Borinqueneers. I am your host, Jorge Mercado, grandson of Borinqueneer Manuel Mercado and lead historical researcher for Borinqueneer's Congressional Gold Medal Ceremony National Committee. Please join me as we venture through the lens of history and reflect on the many stories from the Historical Research Archives. This week, we bring you a heartfelt interview with Bobby W. Simmons, younger brother of Private Irvin Owen Simmons Jr., one of the last 65th Infantry Regiment soldiers to die on the last day of the Korean War, July 27, 1953, from the state of Florida. Stay tuned until the end of this episode to truly feel the impact of this story. I promise it won't disappoint. For those who have followed our committee's Facebook page, you may have come across the story, for we have not only covered it, but covered ceremonies paying tribute with the Borinqueneer's Congressional Gold Medal replica presentations and other memorial items in this soldier's honor to his younger brother in February 2020 and July 2021. For those who are tuning in for the first time, we welcome you to follow our Facebook page if you're interested in the Borinqueneers. Now, for those familiar with this regiment's history regarding the matter of the 1953 integration policy, where the 65th was reconstituted, Albi Albertorio, son of Borinqueneer Anibal Albertorio, put it best in an Orlando Sentinel February 12, 2020 article interview about Private Simmons, where he said, quote, "He fought with them shoulder to shoulder under the same designation as the 65th. So for us, he is a Borinqueneer," unquote. While there are some that may disagree with this position, there are others who agree with it. I've heard it from both sides, and a future episode will be generated regarding this topic. I, however, agree with Mr. Albertorio. Therefore, we will address Private Simmons as Borinqueneer Simmons, for we honor the ethnic diversity of the regiment's past, while remaining true and proud of our American and Puerto Rican history with an anthropology perspective. As a reminder, the goal is not only to formulate a productive presentation within historical guidelines, but also to capture the human experience by producing descriptive accounts of the Borinqueneer stories during the Korean War. The point is, I tend to employ a holistic approach when analyzing and researching stories, so to this end, I sometimes get wrapped in these discoveries by traveling to these places and times in my mind. My historical research journey with the unfolding of events from the past, brought to you on a weekly basis, has opened so many channels of discoveries that now and again, one discovery brings about a constellation of emotions. It is the story of Borinqueneer Simmons and his mother that caught my eye when I came across a 1953 Orlando Sentinel article titled "Snapshots, Letter Tell of GI Killed on the Last Day of War." To make a long story short, through outreach and placing phone calls, I managed to get a hold of Bobby 2 years ago in 2019 with help from the First Baptist Church of Titusville, Florida, where Borinqueneer Simmons service was held in 1953. You will now hear Bobby W. Simmons' pain, sacrifice, and love for God, family, and country as he takes you into the world of a Gold Star family. Without further ado, we bring you the Ultimate Sacrifice episode interview. Can you tell me a little bit about your brother?
He was something special. He stayed in the woods. He left to hunt and fish, and he worked with my dad cutting. We call them buds and boot jacks, but they're really swamp cabbage. And then he left Daddy and went down to A. Dooner & Sons Ranch, and he worked there and was drafted when he was at A. Dooner & Sons Ranch.
So he was drafted into the United States Army.
Right.
Do you remember what time frame was this?
Sometime probably in the middle of 1952.
Do you remember getting the news about him being drafted into the Army?
Yes, I remember he come to the house. He was staying at that time. He was living with his best buddy, John Henry Darby.
We will now dive into Gilberto N. Villahermosa's Honor and Fidelity book, page 292, to give you a sense of what this soldier faced when paying the ultimate sacrifice. It reads, at 1500 hours, the Chinese unleashed a storm of steel that inflicted numerous casualties throughout the 65th sector. Then, at 2145, the barrage ceased as suddenly as it had begun. 15 minutes later, an eerie silence fell across the entire front. The Korean War had ended, unquote. Bobby never read this book, and it so happens that he shared an interesting story with me that supports this account. The account of your neighbor that was a Korean War veteran himself, and he was the hill next to the 65th.
Yes, his name was J.P. Copeland, and he lived around the corner from us, and of course we didn't know him at the time, but then he was telling me one day, we got talking, and he was telling me how he watched the firepower come down on Junior's position. He said he don't know how any of them lived. And that's about what he told me. He was in the intelligence with the Red Army. I don't know what outfit he was in, but yeah, him and I, we got to be pretty close, you know.
Well, I did find 3 names that might have been part of Junior's team. We got a PFC, Burnwell Carmen Pond Heavy Motor Company, a Private Lathe Earl Stone Heavy Motor Company, and then we have Private Irvin Owen Simmons Jr. Heavy Motor Company. 7/27/1953, 2 KIA, your brother DOW died of wounds. I know that you at one time requested to see if I was able to find the name of these other individuals that might have been attached to your brother's position, and it's safe to say that these are probably his comrades.
Right, yeah, you listed them in the back of that little book that you gave me. I'm so proud of.
We will now tap further into the vein of this story. Sadly, pain inherited from the days of yesterday, 68 years ago, still lives fresh in the heart of a brother. This part of the interview goes into the ambient setting of family life being disrupted by the realities of war. If you don't want to answer this now, Bobby, I understand.
Yeah.
And we'll leave it. We'll close this conversation on this. Are you ready? So here goes my question to you. So in the Orlando Sentinel, it was covered the day your mother received the news.
Right.
I know you was in your bedroom reading the comic books. Can you kind of tell me personally what you remember from that day?
Just, you know, we thought he was alive. You know, it was 3 or 4 days or nights after the Korean War ended that, you know, I was in the bed reading the comic book. My 3 sisters in there arguing, and they usually did. But anyway, there was a car pulled up in the driveway. And then my mother got up to go see. We was all in bed just about it, and she got up to go see who it was, what it was, and then all of a sudden she started screaming, and that was it. They guy delivered her a telegram with no stars or nothing on it, no warning or anything, and she just opened it up and see that he was dead. She started screaming.
Thank you, Bobby. I appreciate the fact that you shared this with me, because it's very important that we keep this legacy alive, and that's what we're going to do.
Right.
We have
right.
To do it.
Well, I can remember after that, Mom and Daddy, we went in there and found out, and then she wanted to go talk to our preacher. So we loaded up in the old car we had, and we went down, and we just so happened to catch a preacher there in front of the church, and we all got out and talked to him, and he prayed with us.
In this segment, Bobby speaks on the sergeant who accompanied Junior's casket and the conversation held whether or not to have an open casket at the funeral services.
Yeah, he told my mother that if she wanted to, he would open the casket and let us see him. But said he was killed by artillery, and he advised us not to do it. He said, first of all, there might not be a head on it. It might be nothing hardly in the casket, since he was killed by artillery, and whatever we saw in that casket would be it would carry us to our day soon, and she just couldn't do it. She said, no, I'm not going to do it, because I'll remember that picture of him laying there for the rest of my life.
At this point, I changed my tonality while trying to remain emotionally composed to remind him his brother's head was intact based on the acquired documents collected. 65th Infantry Regiment Colonel Howard's letter to Junior's mother read as follows, quote, "My dear Mrs. Simmons, I extend my most profound sympathy to you in the recent loss of your son, Private Irvin Owen Simmons, who died in the service of his country on July 27, 1953, while defending his company's position against an attack by the enemy near Kumwa, North Korea. He was wounded by fragments of enemy artillery fire. He was rushed to collecting station 65th Infantry Regiment, APO 468, where everything humanely possible was done in his behalf. But he died there an hour later, despite all efforts to save him." Unquote.
Thank you, Bobby. Did you know that he did have his head? Do you know why he had his head? Because if you read the reports, he died on the I can't remember how you call the beds. I'm so emotionally touched right now.
Yeah.
You know the beds that fold in the military. I forgot what it's called. I'm just a little emotionally overwhelmed right now. But he died slowly of his wounds, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that he was DOW means that his body was intact. He probably bled out.
Right, he died. They said that he died in the collecting aid station an hour later after he was hit.
Right.
You know, then we have that collecting aid station directly behind the lines, and they said that's where he was. He died alone, and they had done everything they could for him.
The letters that the Orlando Sentinel printed in 1953, do you still have that original letter?
Yes, sir, I still got it. I carried that in my pocket for 16 months. Well, about 2 weeks after I got to Korea, the mail caught up with us, and my mother had sent me the letter that he had put in her letter was a copy of that news article, and I had 2 letters. One was a Dear John, and the other one was from Mama, and I folded it and put it in my pocket. I showed it to a couple of guys, and they wasn't too interested, so I kept it in my pocket for 16 months, carried it everywhere I went.
I found this bit of information Bobby shared with me so moving that I had to include it in this episode.
What it was after I got back, You know, I went to work out at the Cape at East Coast Canaveral Air Station, which is Patrick. I went to work there, and I kind of got fed up with it, and around 63, and I was going to go back into the Army. And I told my mother. She started crying. And I realized that they prayed for me day and night, and I wasn't going to put it through them again. I couldn't put it through that no more. So I ended up, staying with a job, and I stayed right there until 2008. I put less than 3 months, having 50 years on the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. But I couldn't put Mom and Daddy through that again.
The next final segment of the interview, I've become a bit emotional just having heard the ingrained scars of pain in this veteran's soul. I think it's fair to say it's understandable, given the sadness of this story. So as Bobby and I say farewell to each other, please bear with me, and again, pardon my emotions as I try to hold back tears of honor.
That is a beautiful sentiment. That is so honorable. That is just so powerful, Bobby. And I thank you for thinking about the emotions and just the essence of your mother's heart. Well, thank you so much. Right. That is a beautiful story. I mean, it's a reality of the time when children and sons go off to war, what the wives and the mother go through. It's a common thread and common theme, and you decided to stay home for the sake of your family. The fact that you had already lost a son.
Right.
Thank you for your service. Always thank you for junior service.
As far as my service, that was a privilege and an honor for me.
Absolutely, Bobby.
Okay, buddy, I appreciate it. And
all right.
God bless you and your family. Take care and be safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
I hope this interview has provided you a personal insight into the world of the Gold Star family. Borinqueneer Simmons' ultimate sacrifice in the name of service merits such remembrance and honor, just as those fallen heroes of yesterday to today. As always, to all past, present, and future first responders and veterans, thank you. Thank you for your service, for we stand in solidarity with your spirit of bravery and selfless service. Our time-honored commitment to mastering our craft is the cornerstone and passion of our labor, cemented with virtues that circumscribe a decorum of integrity and professionalism in all we do. We will stay true to the ethos of preserving and bringing light to the 3 pillars of paying tribute, promoting the legacy, and educating the nation about the Borinqueneer's legacy. And remember, may the Northern Star of honor and fidelity safely navigate your daily travels.